When you decide to make a spellcasting character in Elden Ring, you need to make some decisions. Is it going to be an intelligence caster, a faith caster, or maybe you want to be both at the same time? There are many ways to go about it in this game, and each of them comes with their pros and their cons. That said, in this video, I want to bring to your attention a very simple but very effective technique to increase the damage of most of your spells. It does not matter if you're a sorcerer, a priest, or something else in between. My dear viewer, it is my absolute recommendation that when you build a spellcaster, you always use dual wield casting. I will present this information to you in two parts. In the first part of the video, I will explain what this technique is, how to use it, and what effects it provides us. This first part is everything you need to know in order to increase the power of your spellcaster character. After that, if you're interested in seeing the different effects in action, I will show you the testing that I did and the data that I collected in the second part of the video. This way, you can get exactly what you're looking for. In order to help you with this, there will be timestamps in the description of this video so that you can skip straight to the part that interests you the most. Let's get started. I use the term dual wield casting because, in all honesty, I really don't know what else to call it. In practice, this means that we can cast our sorceries and incantations with one catalyst in each hand. Now, in the interest of being very clear about this, we do not cast spells with both catalysts at the same time, like you would attack with dual wield weapons. That is not the case. That said, while we cast the spells with only one catalyst, we still take advantage of the other one we have equipped. In fact, the resulting damage increase from using this technique can be anywhere from a simple 10% all the way to a massive 69% damage increase. Nice. In Elden Ring, there are many sorcery staffs and incantation seals. They have different stats and many different effects. A lot of the staffs and seals have passive effects that increase the power of the sorceries and incantations that belong to certain schools of spells. Some staffs increase the power of gravity sorceries, and some seals increase the power of the frenzied flame incantations. As mentioned before, some damage boosts are as low as 10%, like the Golden Order seal with fundamentalist incantations, and others are as high as 30%, like the Staff of Loss with night sorceries. The result is obvious, and as players, we need to take these damage boosts into consideration when we make our spellcasting characters. The practical application is simple. If you cast a spell of the corresponding school with the corresponding catalyst, you will get the bonus from the staff or seal. But in practice, this is just an option, not a limitation. What I mean is that you're not forced to cast the correct spell with the correct catalyst in order to get the damage boost. You can have two staffs or seals equipped at the same time, one on your main hand and one on your offhand. On your main hand, you use the staff or seal that is the best or strongest for your build. On your offhand, you use the staff or seal that gives the damage boost to the school of spells that you're casting. Now, you cast the spell with the catalyst on your main hand because it is the strongest, but you will still get the damage bonus from the catalyst in your offhand. This way, you can take advantage of casting spells with your most powerful catalyst and still get the additional damage from matching the spell school. With this, the efficiency and power of most of your spells will be increased. This is not all. If you have two catalysts that are the same, for example, two meteorite staffs, one in each hand, then the damage bonus from each staff will stack with each other. All of your gravity sorceries will receive 2 damage bonuses, one from the staff on your main hand and one from your staff on your offhand. Please note that these boosts stack with each other multiplicatively. With this information, it is easy to see that we can always get more damage from our spells by dual wielding our staffs or seals. It is up to us, the players, to see which combination is the most useful for us. Should we use 2 of the same catalysts in order to double up the damage boosts? Or should we use our strongest catalyst in the main hand and the damage boosting one in the offhand? This honestly depends on your situation and depends on what your stats are, what type of spells you're going to be using, so on and so forth. Dual wield casting will always be better, but the exact setup that we need to use will depend on your own build and your own preferences. You have to experiment in order to get the maximum amount of damage possible. Now, in case that it was not clear from my prior explanation, both staffs or seals must be active on your character. What this means is that your character needs to have the catalysts physically on them in order for the bonuses to apply. For example, you cannot equip your offhand catalyst in a secondary slot and have a shield out in your primary. Yes, the catalyst is equipped, but it is not active. As a result, you will not get the damage boost. Remember, the catalyst on your main hand needs to be active to cast the spell, and the catalyst on your offhand needs to be active as well in order to obtain the damage boost. This does mean that if you choose to use this technique, then you cannot have a weapon active to defend yourself with. While a bit annoying, you can always soft swap back and forth between a weapon you have equipped in one of your secondary slots. In my opinion, having a catalyst and a weapon active at the same time is not really useful. You can only do one thing. You can cast a spell or you can swing your weapon. Since we cannot do both at the same time, I prefer to have my weapon in a secondary slot, ready to take out when needed. This way, we can take full advantage of dual wield casting, which will bring the damage of our spells to the next level. Finally, please understand that this technique works for both sorceries and incantations. This same information can be applied to both sorcery staffs and incantation seals. It does not matter if you're a mage or a priest or anything in between. If you're slinging some kind of magic, you can take advantage of dual wield casting. At this time, you have all of the information needed in order to understand and use dual wield casting. Implementing this technique into your spellcasting builds is an immediate and easy way to increase the damage that your character will do. With this information, you can plan which spells best suit your needs and empower them with the correct damage boosting catalyst. Up next, I am going to present to you my testing and the numbers I worked with so that you can see this technique in action. If you're interested in the evidence and the details, then we will be moving on to a showcase of each of the setups we talked about. This way, you can see the differences in damage as well as just how big of an impact this technique has on the power of your spells. To start, we need to establish what are going to be the elements that we will be using for these tests. On your screen, you will find the tools that I used in order to test the different effects of dual wield casting. First and foremost, we will be using 2 different sorcery staffs. First, a standard glintstone staff plus 24 will be the basic point of comparison for all of our values. This is a basic staff that provides 323 sorcery scaling at 80 intelligence. Then, we will be using the digger's staff plus 24 as our damage boosting element. This staff provides us with 299 sorcery scaling at 80 intelligence, as well as an additional boost of 20% more damage to Stone Digger spells. We will be using different setups with these 2 staffs in order to showcase the different possibilities of dual wield casting. As for the spell, we will be using the Rock Blaster sorcery. This is a Stone Digger spell that will take advantage of the damage boost from the Digger's staff. The shockwave that this spell produces is easy to use and comfortable to test with. After testing this spell, we can see that when casted with the glintstone staff plus 24, it deals a total of 756 damage. If we divide this damage by the sorcery scaling of the staff, 323, we obtain that this spell does damage equals to 2.34055.728 times the sorcery scaling of the staff. For the sake of simplicity, we will be rounding this up to 2.341 times the sorcery scaling of the staff. This same calculation has been repeated with other staffs that have different sorcery scalings. Results are within 2 points of damage, which we can attribute to our rounding. This certifies that the strength of the spell is correct. My dear viewer, here are the results of each possible setup that we can use when we cast a spell. There are 4 different situations that we can be in. First is the standard setup. This is the basic casting option for all players. You cast a spell with your strongest catalyst and no additional bonuses. For our experiment, we used the Glintstone Staff plus 24 to cast the Rock Blaster spell. With 323 sorcery scaling, the shockwave of this spell dealt a total of 756 points of damage. This is the control damage for all of the other testing. Second is the single boost setup. In this case, we cast a spell with the corresponding damage boosting catalyst, even if it might not be the strongest one. In this test, we use a Digger's Staff plus 24 to cast the same spell, Rock Blaster. While this staff has less sorcery scaling, only 299 points, than the Glintstone Staff, it does provide an additional 20% damage to Stone Digger spells. Rock Blaster benefits from this bonus. As a result, with this setup, the shockwave of the spell gives us a total of 841 points of damage. Third is the basic dual wield setup. In this setup, we use our strongest catalyst on our main hand and we combine it with the damage boosting catalyst in our offhand in order to obtain the maximum amount of damage possible. This way, we can take advantage of the higher 323 sorcery scaling from the Glintstone Staff and the additional 20% damage bonus from the Digger's Staff. This combination increases our damage, and the shockwave of Rock Blaster deals a total of 908 points of damage. Finally, the last setup is the double boost setup. In this case, we go full specialization and we use 2 Digger Staffs in order to double the damage boost that it gives to the spell Rock Blaster. We start with the basic 299 sorcery scaling, but since we have 2 boosts of damage, the spell receives a total of 44% additional damage. This is thanks to the fact that each 20% boost stacks with each other multiplicatively. All of this comes together to bring a final total of 1009 points of damage, the highest that we have seen from this testing. Please remember, if you ever need to double check these damage values, you can run the damage formula for each case yourself. The formula is simple. You take the sorcery scaling of the staff, you multiply it by 2.341, which is the potency of the spell we are using, and then you multiply it again by the bonus damage from the boosting element. The total of your calculation should be within 2 points of the damage that the game will show you on the screen. So, what can we conclude from this testing? Well, first of all, it is clear to see that dual wield casting is always better than casting with a single catalyst. This is the main point of the technique. No matter what spell you are casting, if it has a damage boosting catalyst in the game, then dual wield casting will always increase the damage that you do. If you are running a full caster build, there is no reason to not be running 2 catalysts, 1 in each hand. The second conclusion we come to is that specialization has a higher chance of providing more damage. Doubling up on the damage boosts by using 2 specific catalysts can increase our damage by massive amounts. That said, we are forced to lean on these specific spells that receive the bonus. On the other hand, all other spells will be much weaker. So yes, specialization gives you more damage sometimes, but it also heavily limits the amount of spells that you can use. It is important to find the combination that best fits your build. Personally, I always use dual wield casting. In fact, I always use the standard dual wield setup. This is option number 3, by the way. I like to use my strongest catalyst in my main hand while keeping 1 or 2 damage boosting catalysts in my offhand to cycle depending on what kind of spells I am using. For example, I have a mage character that uses the Carian Regal Scepter or Lusat's Staff in the main hand to maximize sorcery scaling, and then I put 2 damage boosting staffs on my offhand in order to get additional bonuses for my favorite spells. Like I have been saying throughout this whole video, this is the best way to obtain top tier damage from each and every casting. It does not matter what kind of player you are or what kind of spellcaster you decide to run. Mages, priests, pyromancers, lightning lords, dragon bros, or madness acolytes, everyone can benefit from dual wield casting. I understand that it is a technique that requires some practice, equipping multiple catalysts, remembering to use the correct ones, switching back and forth between them depending on the spell. This can be a lot to handle in the beginning. That said, it is not difficult to manage it after some practice, and I believe everyone can do it. I also understand that this may require some specific build alterations. Dealing with additional equip load or having to sacrifice possible weapon slots might need some additional thinking. But even still, I believe that the additional damage that we can get from this technique is well worth the trouble. Sometimes this extra damage is enough to ensure that we defeat an enemy with 1 less spell, and that means that we use less FP. Hopefully, this tip can help you bring your Spellcaster character to the next level. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope I get to see you on the next one.